Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fantasy Philosophers, Episode 2. Today, we're going to talk about some breakout candidates. I'm going to hand it over to my partner, Dustin, here momentarily to provide some more details. Did want to make a point to give a shout out and thank you to each and every one of you who either viewed, liked, commented, subscribed. Thank you. We truly appreciate it. All the support has just been very uplifting and refreshing. So thank you so much. With that being said, let's dive into episode 2. Dustin, what do we have on the plate today for everyone?
Yeah, I just want to echo your sentiments there, man. The feedback and support that we got was overwhelming. Never expected our first video to get anywhere near the likes, views, anything that it did. So thanks again, guys. Episode 2 here, we are going to talk about some breakout candidates. We are going to go through the NFC first. We're going to go team by team. And Patrick and I are both going to talk about guys on those teams that we think have potential to break out. Sometimes we'll have the same guy, other teams we won't. Even if we do have the same guy, we have different reasons for that. So you'll kind of get, a good picture of why we think that guy's going to break out. But before we do that, I think it's important that we discuss what a breakout candidate is. Right. It's a little bit different from a sleeper. In my opinion, a sleeper is a guy that no one's ever heard of, probably isn't getting drafted in fantasy drafts. And honestly, with the media age that we live in, a true sleeper doesn't even exist anymore these days. But a breakout candidate is a little bit different from that, right? So a breakout candidate is going to be a guy who is getting drafted. He could be a young guy. He could be an older guy. Maybe he broke out a few seasons before, had some injuries, his situation changed, and he cooled off. We might think that this older guy is going to break out again, but he also could be, a younger second, third, fourth year player. But what really makes him a breakout candidate has nothing to do with age, and it has everything to do with ADP, or average draft position. So a breakout candidate is going to be somebody who we think has potential to greatly outperform their ADP where they're currently being drafted in fantasy drafts right now. Anything I missed there, Patrick? Anything you want to add?
I just real quick, when we pulled the ADP, it's going to vary day to day. So I noticed that, over the few days that Dustin and I were really diving into research and pull data, depending on what day or time each of us looked into that player, there were some slight differences. So just wanted to be as transparent as possible and share that with everyone. Beyond that, as far as criteria and the actual source where this ADP is coming from, we did use myfantasyleague.com. This is focused on redraft leagues, so I did want to make that clear as well. 10-team, Superflex PPR. We did decide to go ahead and exclude mock drafts. For me, I just feel that when nothing's at stake, people have a tendency to use those mock drafts to try just random strategies to see what they can possibly pull off. Or probably the most common that I've seen in my experience is people staying in for the first few of rounds or so and then completely leaving, and it's just an auto pick the rest of the way.
Yeah.
So it seemed appropriate to pull that. And this is going to be everything starting after June 1st. So worth noting as well. But without further ado, Dustin, I'll let you take the lead on this. Where do you want to start today?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to go kind of around the compass and go northeast, southwest. So we'll start with the NFC North. And alphabetically, the Bears are first. So let's start there. For me, my breakout candidate that I like off the Bears is Anthony Miller. ADP of 146, going around wide receiver 59. So pretty late. He is a guy who dealt with some injuries both his rookie and his sophomore year, but still managed to actually produce a little bit, right? So if healthy, I think he'll be the number 2 option in the Bears passing offense, and A-Rob's going to take most of the attention away, right? So he should be seeing lesser corners, lesser coverage. Foles is also there now, so I'm not convinced that Foles. Like, I think Foles definitely has a chance to take the job from Mitch Trubisky, but I also think that bringing Foles in has a chance to kind of light a fire under Mitch's butt, and we might see some competitive nature come out. I think regardless of who is at under center next year for them, we're going to see an upgrade in the QB play because there just has to be point blank. Um, you know, as far as stats go, um, as a sophomore, he still managed to increase his yardage total and his reception total and his target total, right? So we know that his sophomore, I'm getting my years mixed up, his rookie year, he came in, he was dealing with a separated shoulder all season. He still managed to record 7 touchdowns. Well, he came back next year, still was dealing with some injuries, kept him off the field here and there. He definitely played through them still. And as I mentioned, he managed to record more targets, more receptions, more yards. His TDs regressed a little bit, though. They went down from 7 to 2. So even if we get the same amount of yards, targets, and receptions, but his touchdowns kind of regress somewhere in the middle between the two, already we're looking at him outperforming his wide receiver 59 ADP, because last year, even with only 2 touchdowns, he managed to finish wide receiver 56. So he's going right about where he finished. But for me, I just see so much more potential. The key factor being the quarterback play, right? Anytime you draft a receiver, you're kind of tied to not only the quarterback, but the offensive line. Both of those were areas that the Bears struggled last year. Did they do enough in the offseason to address it? I think they did enough to improve Anthony Miller's outlook for fantasy. Whether that translates to win totals for the Bears, that's another story. But that's why Anthony Miller is my breakout candidate.
Yeah, great data to provide as far as why. Ironically, I agree. I initially had Anthony Miller down for my breakout candidate with the Chicago Bears. I did decide to go in a different direction. Just to give a little more background about Dustin and I, we do have a few years experience at this point, competing against each other in Dynasty. So I think we have a pretty good feel for how each other views certain players. So I had a feeling before I saw that he had picked Anthony Miller that was his pick. So I definitely took a different direction and went with David Montgomery. So when I think about David Montgomery, post-hype breakout just screams at me. It really does. At the time that I pulled the data, his ADP was mid-6th round. No competition at all added to the roster. That's going to provide him with an extremely solid floor for touches going into the season. In fact, he averaged 17 touches per game over his last 10 games of last season. And then, as you mentioned, I know there is that quarterback competition. I've seen a lot of people say that they expect Foles to win the job, but I've also seen the people within the organization to continue to push that it's a competition. It seems like no ultimate decision has been made. And honestly, with Nick Foles, maybe it's not a bad idea to give Trubisky the first chance to prove himself. Because worst case scenario, if you bring Foles in, well, how many times has he done that and excelled? And
Stick with what works.
there you go. I just think it was just worst case scenario overall for the Bears offense last year. When you can get a guy in the mid-6 at the starting running back, going back to last year, averaging those 17 touches down the last 10 game stretch, breakout's coming. David Montgomery, go get him.
Yeah, good points, man. I definitely think he's in line for a lot of touches this year. A lot. So good picks. And, you know, as you mentioned, you kind of knew I was going to pick him. I drafted him in our startup a couple years ago, held on to him for a long time. I just recently got rid of him, and it pained me to do so. Sent him to our whole league's nemesis, Mr. Frank. What up, Frank? Hope you're watching.
Shout out.
Yeah, what up, Frank? Enjoy Anthony Miller next season. He might be nice. So, yeah, that's the Bears. You want to move on to the Lions next?
Let's do it. I'll go ahead and jump to the Lions.
Yeah.
So, just a preface here, I thought long and hard about my breakout candidate for the Lions, and it was quite challenging. It really was. Where I landed really surprised me.
Me too.
Kerryon Johnson. Yep, I said it. Kerryon Johnson. So the injuries, and I get the concern. At the time when I pulled the ADP data, he's going as a late 11th round pick. And I guess one last clarification on the criteria. This is any non-IDP player. So kickers and defenses are included. I don't think we hit that at the beginning, but wanted to make sure to mention it. So the fact that Kerryon Johnson has gone back-to-back seasons suffering knee injuries, absolutely concerning. I get that 100%. Looking back at the injury he sustained in 2018, that was during week 11. It was a left knee sprain. The good news there is it was confirmed that there was no structural damage, which is great news. Unfortunately, as we all know, last season in the first quarter of week 7, he left the game, right knee injury, undisclosed, AKA no specific details provided. It did require surgery. However, it was surprising to see him return in week 16. It really tells me it wasn't anything serious. I'm thinking most likely injury, probably a meniscus repair. I'm no doctor, no experience in the medical field at all, just gut opinion, take it or leave it. And yes, they did bring DeAndre Swift. I love the talent. With the COVID-19 offseason that all rookies are facing, that's a major obstacle. It really is, to come in, pick up the system, learn the playbook, build that rapport and that team cohesion. Does he have the talent to just straight out beat Kerryon Johnson? I think he does. But if Kerryon surprises us and remains healthy, I don't see the Lions just completely fading him away. So when you can get a guy as a late 11th that, should he stay healthy, probably provides you flex consideration week in and week out with upside if anything happens to Swift, that's my breakout.
All right. Yeah, I mean, Carryon's definitely shown some flashes, right? That he might have the potential to be an elite back. Problem is, he's never on the field as much as you want him to be. And for me, just a whole confluence of things makes me have Carryon as a fade right now. I don't trust Matt Patricia, right?
Good point. That's tough.
Yeah, I mean, the football guys, Cecil Lammey, Sigmund Bloom, Matt Waldman, I think they might have come up with this term, or at least started using it widely, assumption of rational coaching, right? So just because you see that Carryon's flashed, I've seen it, we've all seen it, doesn't mean that we can assume that Matt Patricia is going to be rational and say, that dude needs more carries, right? We fall into that trap every year with somebody, and I'm over it.
Yeah, I agree with all of those points. A few last things to take into consideration. I mean, obviously the ADP, where you're taking them, because DeAndre Swift, who has not played a single game in the NFL, he's going in the late 4th.
Yeah, it's the new flavor.
So the value, along with the fact that Kerryon's draft capital is essentially the same as Swift's, second round. Yeah, it's unfortunate with the knee injuries, but I just hate to completely count a guy out. We saw Dalvin Cook and what he did last year. I'm not saying that Kerryon will have anything close to a Dalvin-like season because there's a great chance of a two-back committee along with the rookie Swift. So, certainly don't expect first through third round value, but is it out of the realm of possibility for him to get you fourth, fifth round value if he stays healthy? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. And again, it's just a personal thing for me. Like, he's got to slip a little further than that. Like, he's got to fall to me probably in the late seventh before I'm really like, yeah, I got to take him. So all good points though. I loved Kerryon until they drafted Swift, really, just because the NFL is kind of moving towards that running back by committee thing, right? But yeah, I like it, man. So for me, I kind of went back and forth between some receiving options. So I went back and forth between Danny Amendola and TJ Hawkinson, and I can already hear people giggling that I just said Danny Amendola is a breakout candidate.
Texas Tech, what up?
Yeah, I like Danny Amendola. He's not even being drafted for the most part in fantasy drafts, but I ended up going with TJ Hawkinson. I actually did a little bit of research on both, and I thought Hawkinson probably presented a stronger case. So going around ADP 100, 12th tight end off the board. But over the last 3 seasons, Detroit has passed about 63% of the time. So it's a pretty pass-heavy offense, right? He's going to be on the field a lot. They're going to ask him to catch a lot of passes. It's his second year. So historically, tight ends have a hard time doing a ton in year one. And when he was on the field, he was definitely producing more than you typically expect a rookie tight end to produce. So that was very encouraging. He didn't finish the year because of injuries, but you can take a look kind of at the box score, the game log, whatever you'd like. You can see from week 1 until I think it was week 12 that he went out. You can kind of see like a steady trend, especially towards the end where he starts getting more heavily involved in the offense. He starts getting more targets, more catches. I think that continues. Now, keep in mind, last year the Lions had a little bit of trouble keeping their QB healthy, right? So if Stafford additionally is healthy all year, I think the two of them could really come together to make some magic happen, because you've got Marvin Jones on one side, you've got Kenny Golladay on the other, who, I mean, both of those guys are great wide receivers. Now you're going to ask, I don't know who you're going to ask to cover Hawkinson. He's too fast for a linebacker. He's too big for most safeties. Who's going to cover the dude over the middle? I'm not sure anyone will. So he's going as tight end 12. I think he easily hits top 12 tight end, because last year, last year he finished just 55 points outside of tight end 12, and he only played, I think, 12 games. He definitely didn't finish the season, and he missed a significant chunk. I think right now he's being drafted at his floor. So anytime someone's being drafted at their floor, I'm hitting smash all day when they come around to me. He's being drafted about the 8th round, which is where I like to take tight ends in redraft. So if it stays this way, I'm probably going to find myself with a lot of TJ Hawkinson this year. And I expect that I'm not thinking that he's going to be a top 1, 2, or 3 in that Kittle, Ertz, Kelsey type of tier. But I think he has a great chance to be the very first guy we talk about in that second tier of guys.
I can certainly see that. And Hawkinson, I definitely considered as my breakout. The only reason I felt a little hesitant was just seeing past tight ends that had played with Stafford that, had a pedigree somewhat of Hawkinson, not to the same level, but, Eric Ebron, he was taken high in the draft. Brandon Pettigrew, I don't remember anything about his draft capital, but I just haven't really seen a tight end produce year in and year out with Stafford. That was the reason I pumped the brakes there, but I love the talent, Yeah, I can absolutely see it 100%. I just wanted to go a little different direction and take on someone that people would probably be surprised to hear about. So,
Yeah, and I love it.
well put.
And I did just want to say um, about it, Danny Amendola. This is all I'm going to say about it. It's hard to find a wide receiver that's not getting drafted in fantasy drafts that's going to be in line for 100 targets. He had 96 targets last year and roughly the same amount last year. Spend your last pick on Danny Amendola, folks.
Not a bad idea. Not a
Yeah.
bad idea at all. Great job there, Dustin. I like it. I like it. You're really making me rethink some people in our upcoming redraft leagues this up in a few months. So
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. Just want to get people thinking about it, right?
oh
Um,
yeah,
Groupthink doesn't win you a championship. It's all about
never.
identifying those guys who are going to do exactly what we talked about earlier, and that's outperform ADP. So,
There you go. There you go. Well put. Let's see. Moving right along. Let's I think we went the same direction here. Let's go Green Bay. Let's go
yeah,
Green Bay Packers. Alan Lazard. Alan Lazard being taken really late.
super
What do
late.
you have on
What?
him, Dustin?
I got that he's going at 174 ADP overall, wide receiver 74, somewhere in rounds 12 to 14 typically, which I haven't done a ton of mock drafts for redraft lately, but that blew my mind.
Yeah. But Alan Lazard, let's talk about him. So, you know, I'm not gonna act like he just, produced a whole lot last season, but he was on the field. And when you have Aaron Rodgers at QB, after the draft that just went down, and I can't imagine him not being overly motivated. But the fact that you have Devontae Adams drawing all the top corners for each and every team that they play, still can't stop him. That's a conversation for another episode. The size that Lazard brings, and probably most importantly, the confidence that Aaron Rodgers has openly and publicly communicated to the media on multiple occasions. What's not to like there, especially where he's going? You know, he has rapport with Aaron Rodgers, played last year. Yeah, they brought in Devin Funchess, but he might be a decent situational option at best, in my opinion. But Alan Lazard, when you can get someone who's expected to be in that wide receiver 2 role with Aaron Rodgers that late, I love it. I love it.
And, I'm shaking my head a lot. Um, I agree 100%. We actually have the same player here, right? So one of my favorite things to do is find the intersection of where narrative street meets statistical analysis street, right? And I think we've kind of done that when we talk about how Alan Lazard was not on the field that much in the beginning of the season. How did he get there? Well, according to Green Bay media, Aaron Rodgers said that dude needs to be on the field. So what that tells me is that Aaron Rodgers trusts this guy, which goes
Exactly.
a long way in Aaron Rodgers' offense. Um, Now, on top of that, I've got some pretty interesting stats here, right? So he did only get 14% of the target share last year, but he didn't even start seeing consistent snaps until week 12, only 2 weeks before week 12, where he was over 50% snap share. After that, it skyrockets and he's in there all the time, right? You mentioned Devin Funchess. I could see Devin Funchess playing a big slot role, but nothing more than that, because they have basically a rookie tight end in Jay Sternberger, right? So they don't know that he's even going to be an effective pass catcher over the middle at this point in his career. So maybe that's why they brought in Funchess. And to me, if you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Equinemius St. Brown on the roster, who you were excited about, it seemed, maybe a year or two ago,
Great point.
to me, bringing in Funchess is an indictment on those two guys.
I agree with that for
Maybe I'm
sure.
wrong, but It just doesn't seem like they needed to sign Funchess, right? Now, as far as some statistical analysis here, I found a little piece that that's floating around Twitter from a Green Bay beat writer, and his name is escaping me at the moment. I believe it was Dan Herman.
We can
Anyway,
double
he's got
check that. We'll
yeah,
throw him in the description. Definitely
for
want to
sure. Well,
give him
I'll have
props where
to
it's
give
due.
him a shout out because he did some great work here, and I'm gonna quote a little bit of it. So I'm gonna compare Alan Lazard's age 24 season to Kenny Galladay's age
Ooh,
24 season.
let's
Yeah.
hear it.
So first, we're gonna look at their measurables because their measurables are dang near identical. Both 6'4". Um, Kenny Galladay is 218 pounds. Alan Lazard is 227. They both have 32-inch arms. They both run 4.5 40s. As far as their vert and their broad jump, Alan Lazard wins by an inch or two here or there. Kenny G did one more bench press rep than Alan Lazard. So measurables, almost identical. Now let's talk about the age 24 season. Kenny Galladay had 473 snaps and got 48 targets out of that. Alan Lazard had 497 snaps and got 52 targets. Kenny Galladay on those 48 targets got 28 receptions for 477 yards. Alan Lazard on his 52 targets got 35 receptions for 477 yards. So again, we're almost exactly identical, and
Wow,
they both had 3 touchdowns that year, their age
that is
24 year.
crazy.
Yeah. Their longest play, Kenny Galladay 54, Alan Lazard 43. Kenny Galladay had a 58% catch rate. Alan Lazard had 67%. Kenny Galladay had a 9.9 yard per target. Alan Lazard had 9.2. So their age 24 season, they put up almost exactly identical numbers. What gets really interesting is if you look at the next 2 seasons for Kenny Galladay. So in those next 2 seasons, Kenny Galladay had 70 catches for 1,063 yards and 5 touchdowns. And then he also had a season of 65 catches for 1,190 yards and 11 touchdowns. Now, by no means am I guaranteeing that Alan Lazard is going to do that. But if we just look at that, that gives us a glimpse of what his ceiling is, of what his potential is. And for where he's going in drafts, I mean, honestly, I might take him a couple rounds earlier because I don't want someone to snipe him
No
because
kidding.
you're not going to get, it's super rare to get a wide receiver 2 in the late rounds like that. And if he does something like Kenny Galladay did in his next season, I mean, that could be season winning ADP steal right there.
Yes, it certainly could. And
Yeah.
wow, I had no idea. And it's crazy how identical those metrics were when comparing Alan Lazard to well-known Kenny Galladay. So well done.
Well, and what is interesting is like when I see Alan Lazard on the field, I'm like, man, that's a big dude. And yeah, I know Kenny Galladay's big. I just don't see it. And maybe it's the extra 10 pounds Lazard carries. Maybe that's what does it. But it's weird. Kenny Galladay looks a bit quicker and faster, but they basically run the same 40 time. So
Those
really
long
interesting.
strides.
I can't wait to see how that turns out, how that works out. I definitely think he's in line for wide receiver 2 numbers next year. He might be a low end wide receiver 2, but I think he definitely has potential to be high end wide receiver 2
Yeah.
consistently.
I mean, I think it's safe to speak for both of us when I say the potential upside is well worth the risk where his ADP is. So
Oh, for
Alan
sure.
Lazard,
Yeah.
go
And if
get
you're
him.
drafting soon, you got to get him because I do not expect his ADP to stay that low. I expect as we gear
Yeah,
up
that's a
for
good
draft
point.
season, for redraft season, I expect people to wake up, smell the coffee, and start taking him earlier. So if you're drafting soon, man, you're loving that ADP right now, for sure.
I agree. I agree. Well said.
Yeah. Who do we got next? The Vikings?
Yes, sir. Take it away.
Yeah. So the Vikings, well, first of all, I think we have to address some of the bigger news that came out today about them. Dalvin Cook announced that he will not participate in training camp. He will not take a snap until he gets paid. So we might be
Knew
looking
it
at a
was
holdout.
coming. I knew it was coming.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of the new norm. These guys got the short end of the stick as far as running backs and compensation goes, and they know it, and they're trying to protect them and theirs and get their money now because there's no guarantees in the NFL, especially for a running back. So, you know, maybe the correct answer here is actually Alexander Madison or Mike Boone, but
Hey,
I got nothing really to talk about for them. So,
yeah, we're gonna hope that Dalvin Cook does not hold out, of course.
yeah,
But thank you for bringing that up. I heard about that earlier today, and I heard some hints at it. A few months ago, it seemed like most of the attention around the league was more so on Joe Mixon. So, for Adam Schefter of all people to come out and report what he did, and for those of you who haven't seen it, Adam Schefter, you can pull him up, ESPN, Twitter, whatever, well-known guy. But anywho, hearing that from someone like him, that's not something that I'm taking with a grain of salt. I'm taking that straight to the bank and treating it as fact, just based on Schefter's reputation. So it's a serious concern, especially if you're doing these redraft league drafts, early, versus the weekend or even the night prior to the kickoff of the season. Man, to
it's a risk for
spend
sure.
what I'm seeing as go as a mid first round pick, that's nerve wracking. That's nerve wracking. So, you know, I will say sometimes fortune does favor the bold. So if you're feeling bold, go for it. Me, I'm staying away. But that's for another episode. But yeah, Alexander Madison should be on everyone's radar. So we certainly wanted to put that out there with the recent breaking news.
For sure. And in my opinion, if Cook doesn't play, Boone should be on your radar as well. They both looked good when they got opportunities last year. And again, the NFL is moving towards that 1-2 punch type of thing. So without Dalvin Cook, maybe they say they're better off with both guys. So just something to keep in mind. But that's not actually neither one of them. All three of those guys that we've already talked about, none of them are actually my breakout candidates. My guy is actually their tight end 2 in Irv Smith Jr.
Likewise.
Yeah, he's going at 134 overall, tight end 18. So he's going fairly late. Now, last year, he did finish only as tight end 33. However, he didn't really begin to get a whole lot of usage until week 8. After week 8, his snap percentage never went below 60%, which is encouraging for me. Rudolph is now 30. Kyle Rudolph is now 30. Stephon Diggs is gone, right? And Rudolph has been, he's been healthy for the most part in his career. He hasn't missed a lot of games, but Father Time, that dude's undefeated, man. And 30 is the age where across the board we start to see more issues, especially soft tissue type injuries in every position. So while I never will advocate for counting on someone to get injured, I think there is a possibility that we see Rudolph miss time, more possibility than we've seen in years past, right? So that definitely factored in a little bit. Again, I mentioned Stephon Diggs is gone, so I kind of expect them to explore some more 2 tight end sets, right? Some more 12 personnel. That's where their strength lies. You've got a rookie wide receiver 2 in Justin Jefferson. As good as he is, with rookies, especially wide receivers, in my opinion, there's no guarantee that they're going to step on that field and be able to produce in the way that especially the fantasy community thinks they are. I'm not saying that he won't.
We got spoiled last season.
We did get spoiled. We had some good rookies last season. But yeah, I think we see more two tight end sets. Um, and talking about the age thing, Thielen is getting up there in age too. He's 29. So he could potentially miss some time. So, you talk about losing your top two receiving threats, and who do you got? Well, you got Irv Smith and Justin Jefferson, right? And Irv Smith, athletic freak, super young. I believe he's only 21 years old at the time of this recording. And so the sky's the limit for him. So I think that his ceiling is capped a little bit if everyone stays healthy. But he's definitely got the injury upside. And if Rudolph goes down for a good chunk of the season, I think Irv sniffs tight end one. Not the tight end one. Top 12 tight end. I
Oh
think he
yeah,
sniffs top 12 if Rudolph goes down. I think if Rudolph stays healthy all year, he probably is looking at like a floor of tight end 15 or 18 where he's being drafted, but has upside to go higher. For me, especially because injury, man. I really think that you have to look at the age of their top two offensive weapons. And if they're going to get increased usage, like everyone predicts, their chance of injury is also increased. So that's where I'm at on Irv Smith. I had a little bit of a hard time with the Vikings because, I mean, outside of Justin Jefferson and before this Dalvin Cook news came out, there just wasn't really anybody on the roster other than Irv Smith where I looked at ADP and said, that's the guy.
for sure, for sure. I had Irv Smith as well.
Yeah. What do you got?
I mean, the age, the talent, a guy who in 2019 he gets just under 62% snap share. What's interesting to note is 31.5% was in the slot, which is intriguing. It really is, especially as a
Absolutely.
rookie. 47 targets, 36 receptions, 311 yards, only 2 touchdowns. I know Rudolph, I think, had 6 total touchdowns, but yards, targets, receptions, practically the same. As far as red zone receptions, Irv Smith had 7, which is number 11 at that tight end position. And although Rudolph had 20% more of the snap share, he only had 1 additional 8 red zone receptions. So that was really interesting also. He has the second round draft capital. He's obviously the future at the tight end position for the Minnesota Vikings. The departure of Diggs, the addition of a rookie replacement who's having to go through such a challenging offseason with everything that we're all facing. I could certainly see that percentage that he lines up in the slot increasing. I mean, there's no denying the talent, and when you're only behind someone such as Kyle Rudolph, who, as you did touch on, he's been very consistent over the years. But as an aging tight end, and I think most would agree with me when I say he's much less athletic compared to someone such as Irv Smith.
For sure.
I see the breakout coming. Personally, injury or not to Rudolph, if he just flat out outplays him, it's really going to force Minnesota's hand at some point. So the sky's the limit there. Justin Jefferson, I'm intrigued to an extent, but part of me wonders if that production that we saw was really just a product of that LSU offense, which was just out of this world, So I don't want to sit here and pretend that he's going to do anything near what he did in that last season at LSU in the pros. And rookie wide receivers, yeah, we got real spoiled last season, but typically they really struggle in that first year, as they transition into the NFL,
Yep.
really make that adjustment to NFL speed. I mean, the coverage they're facing is much more complex.
The route trees.
Exactly. So,
Yeah,
lots of things going in Irv Smith's favor, especially for how well he played, based on a somewhat limited snap share. Um, he's breaking out. Irv Smith, go get him.
for sure. I think we can both confidently say that in the limited action he had last year, we liked what we saw. Um,
Definitely.
w- One quick thing I'll say about Justin Jefferson and your and the slot is Justin Jefferson almost exclusively operated out of the slot in college. If he is doing the same thing in the league, I think he'll be super effective. But I don't know that if they try and force him to be an outside receiver, if that's going to work out that well, especially trying to figure out how to do that in this strange, weird off season. Um, all remains to be seen, I think, and it'll be really interesting. Are we even going to get to see how they're using them in camp in preseason? Who knows, man? But I think you're correct. We saw Irv Smith an uptick in usage and production towards the end of the season. I think he continues that, and definitely the future of tight end for them. Maybe not going to be the dude this year, but it's coming. And you're right. He's way more athletic than Rudolph. And Rudolph, he's been a consistent fantasy producer, a consistent on the field producer, but he's never been that guy who you say, man, he's just so athletically and more talented. He's just better than everybody, right? We've never had him in that conversation with those guys like Ertz and Kelsey and Gronk. And so I could totally see if Irv Smith, um, you know, balls out and shows us his athletic talent. Maybe Rudolph does take a backseat sooner rather than later. I'm excited to find out either way.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, I believe that concludes our breakout candidates. Again, that's NFC North. We're going to be going around the compass, hitting each team in the NFC before we pivot over to the AFC. So more content coming very, very soon. Any closing words to share, Dustin?
Yeah, just want to thank everybody again for the views, the support, the feedback. It's been a long time dream of mine to do something like this. And when you suggested it, man, I was a little apprehensive. And when we posted it, I was like really nervous about it. What
Ditto.
kind of feedback were we going to get? Is everyone going to think we're off our rockers and should quit immediately? But, we got kind of the opposite. People seem to enjoy the content, which I'm really thankful for. Obviously, we're learning things here. So, you know, I'm just excited to keep going, man. We got the NFC East up next, and I'm ready to talk about. I'm ready to talk about those dudes, man. I'm excited every time we talk about doing this, man. I get excited, and we do these later at night a lot of times, so it gets tough for me to go to sleep afterwards because I'm so jacked
I'm
up,
glad I'm
man.
not the
So
only one.
I'm jacked up already. Let's do it, man. NFC East
Awesome.
coming at you.
Awesome. NFC East up next. Until then, Fantasy Philosophers, episode 2 in the book. Stay tuned. Again, genuinely, thanks to each and every one of you who showed up support of any kind. It means the world. Um, Give us some comments. What do you think about our breakout candidates? Did we miss someone? Are we way too low on other people that were on a team when we went a different direction? We'd love to hear. We'd love to hear your thoughts, opinions. What did we do good, if anything? What could we do better? Um, we're just really striving to improve each and every episode. So any feedback and all feedback is welcome. Thanks in advance. Until then, Fantasy Philosophers signing out.